Welcome to UAPB Currents. I'm your host, Shelly Roby Ingram, and today we are joined by Cindy Hurst, filmmaker, who is now making a home in Arkansas.
Yes.
And we'll find out a little bit more about where you're from and how you came to be a new Arkansan. But welcome to UAPB Currents.
I'm so glad to be here.
And we're excited to have a filmmaker in UAPB studio. We love everyone who has anything to do with any type of media and production, and so it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on set.
Thank you so much.
So tell us a little bit about you and your background, and like I said, you're a new Arkansan, so tell us where you're from and how you came to be here in Arkansas.
I'm from, as my father would say, Greensburg, Louisiana, but I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and that's where I went to school. And I ended up coming here because I got married in June.
Okay.
So my husband is from here.
In June of this year?
June of this year.
Newlywed. Congratulations.
Thank you. I got married in June, and at first it was decided that he was going to move to where I was. Mm-hmm. But, you know, having a long distance relationship is kind of hard. So we ended up getting married earlier than we thought we would. And then I just said, hey, let's do it. So I moved up here, and the great thing about it is, and very, I don't want to say unexpected, but I am a little surprised. I've received such a warm welcome mm-hmm. from almost every segment of the community in Arkansas. I've been welcomed, you know, as a filmmaker, as a producer, and I mean, I'm really loving the whole experience. I feel like I'm becoming an Arkansan.
Yeah.
But I'll always be a saint. You know what I mean?
Our chancellor will be excited to hear that because he's a New Orleans fan. So
okay. All right, yeah. But I'm liking
it's okay. We accept that black and gold, it works either way. Black and gold, it works either way. I think he wears his black and gold and he just says, you know, go Lions, go Saints. Really softly. So
right.
Tell us how you got into film. How did that start?
That's really a wild story.
Okay.
Because I had no idea that I was going to be a filmmaker. When I did my first film, Natural Woman, mm-hmm. Natural Woman was going to be a book about natural hair. When I went natural, I had a really negative experience. I went natural in 1999 mm-hmm. when a lot of women in the South were not doing so. So after I had my spiritual awakening, the thing that caused me to actually become natural, I start noticing that something is wrong with this. You know, why did I have a reluctance to go natural in the beginning? You know, why did I get that sick feeling in the pit of my stomach when I was gonna go natural? And then when I would meet other women on the street, they would be like, oh my God, you're so brave for doing that. And then when I would see another natural woman in a room, we'd have this thing going, you know, and I felt that it was something deeper than hair. So I wanted to write a book about it, and I wanted to be a book about the narratives of women and their journey and what happened with them when they decided to go natural. Right. So I started getting videotape of the women just so I could have an accurate narrative of their story when I did the writing part. And so I started getting like really powerful footage. And it just kind of evolved into a film. I had no film experience. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that it was something that I felt was gonna be good. Mm-hmm. So I went out and I bought a camera and my one light kit and I took off across the country, and you know, I'll be in Florida, in Michigan somewhere, and my mom would call me and say, well, where are you? I said, I'm down here getting footage for the film. And she was like, film? What are you talking about? I said, I'm making a film. Nobody in my family believed me because of course I didn't have that background. So I gathered up all of my footage and I said, well, you know, I have all of this footage. I need to start talking to real filmmakers to find out what to do with everything. Yeah. So when I started asking people in the industry, getting consultations from people. They were looking at everything. They were like, well, my goodness, you're already doing it. Like everything that I had done, I had made this trailer. I was going to try to get funding and all of that. And they were like, wow, this is really good. You're doing everything you're supposed to do. Like, you're natural. And I'm like, really? And all I knew is that I loved it. And I found a vehicle to use as a method to get subjects that I cared about into the community. Right. So then I decided to go to film school to see if I really liked it. That's when I ended up going to Prague, and it was a really intensive program where we were working, 18 hours a day. And I said, wow, I like this, I like the process. It was fun then, it's still fun now, and it's still this great, perfect vehicle that I can use to talk about all of these important subjects. So that's how it happened.
Wow, so you fell into it. And what were you doing prior to starting to do your films?
Well, my background is psychology.
Okay.
I think at the time, at the inception of my doing all of this, I was working as a contract federal investigator, which was okay, but my heart has always been in the community. I've always enjoyed working in social settings. So I think at the time I ended up, I was a counselor and an advocate for women and victims of domestic violence.
Okay.
And I was doing that at the same time that I was producing Natural Woman, and I've always maintained that type of work. That's when I'm not doing film, I'm counseling disadvantaged kids or things like that, because that's another passion of mine. So.
Right. And how has your psychology background played into the way you create your films?
It's everything. All of my films, well, not all of them, but I would think that the focal point of most of my films deal with social issues. I'm a bleeding heart. I always said that if I wasn't a filmmaker, I'd be an attorney, a broke attorney, because I would take all of these pro bono cases of people who I feel like have some sort of injustice against them. So I guess I'm just an advocate of sorts, and I like to talk about the hard topics, like doing a film on natural hair and Black women. At the time when I produced the film, that was a hard topic. I did another film with a gentleman by the name of Charlie Granger, and it talks about what was going on in the 60s, the racism that occurred in the NFL during the 60s, and how African Americans really changed the sport of football. And dealing with the current players today and the current industry today, and talking about how these guys who actually made the industry what it is today, how they're forgotten. And for the current players to stop thinking about the dollars for a little bit, and think about these heroes who actually showed us that the shoulders that you were standing on, and think about them, because a lot of these guys are living on fixed incomes. They didn't make a lot of money back then, but they paved the way for the current players. So when I do those screenings, those are some of the things that I talk about. But creating a safe space where nobody's being accused of anything, but to just have a very positive conversation to eradicate a problem and move forward. That's what I intend for my films to do.
So you're still doing your pro bono work, you just found a different vehicle, a more creative vehicle for it.
I am still doing my pro bono work, of sorts.
All right, so we're gonna go to break, and when we come back, then we'll get into some of your other film work and what some of your other films have been about.
Okay.
All right, we'll be right back on UAPB Currents.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. Stop the texts. Stop the wrecks. Visit us at stoptextstoprex.org.
Welcome back to UAPB Currents, and again we are joined by Mrs. Cindy Hurst, Mrs. Cindy Hurst, newlywed.
Yes.
And her proud husband is standing here in the studio cheering her on as we speak, who is a filmmaker, a Black independent filmmaker, African-American independent filmmaker, female. And again, as I said earlier in the segment, it's an honor to have you here in the studio, because something that I tell us being at an HBCU, I get a lot of students who come through, and of course the first thing that they all want to be is on-camera talent. And my push is always to encourage them to do the behind-the-scenes things, and to learn that aspect of it. And most of them that do, as I did, find it extremely rewarding to learn the editing and the production and all of that part of it. So tell us what it's been like for you, your experience growing and falling into this, being a female African-American filmmaker.
Well, what I would like to say is there aren't many of us out there. Right. And I don't think that there are a lot of us out there because the major industry of film is largely dominated by men, white men. You have some really good up-and-coming Black directors that are coming up now doing some fabulous work. And you even have some female directors that's done work of note. Right. I chose to be independent because I did not want to get into the cutthroat industry, because it is a really cutthroat industry. When you have too many people involved, and this just, to me, it's a personality type of decision that I made. Right. My personality is this: I have a mission for the type of work that I want to do, and I'm not going to compromise that. I don't want to get, in bed with somebody, so to speak, and compromise the art that I want to do, my artistic vision that I have, or the underlying theme of the work. I don't want to compromise that. And sometimes when you are in the industry, you're working with so many people, and everybody wants to have a part and a say as to what the final product is going to be. Absolutely. I chose to be independent because I want to have total control of my work. Now, there is a downside to that, because now I'm doing all of the marketing, I'm doing all of the producing, I'm doing practically everything. But when I'm finished with my product, it's mine. Yes. I can take it anywhere I want to take it. I can come on a show like this, and I don't have anybody telling me, stick to these points or these topics, or don't mention this, or, I'm in total control. It's more work involved, but I think at the end of the day, I'd rather give birth to my babies, as I call them, nurture them, and turn them into what I want them to be, as opposed to collaborating with somebody else. But that's my personality. As far as distribution, that's another deal, because I used to say that I'm an embryo in the industry. I think that I'm an infant now. I'm hoping to move into toddler stage after the next film, but as far as distribution, I'm willing to work with the larger industry, because now I'm starting to realize that I want more people to see my work. When I did Natural Woman, and I call Natural Woman my little film that could, because it's still out there. People is still in demand. People still want to see that work because it's important work. Well, if I hook up with a larger distribution company, then I will be able to have my work reach more people in a short amount of time. So I'm starting to learn different things, different parts of the industry that I want to be a part of. Now, if somebody like Spike Lee called me and say, hey, I've seen some of your work, I would love for you to work with me on my next production. Cindy Hurst will be gone. Me too. Me too, Spike. Or any other producer of note. And mainly because I want to learn more. I want to learn more about the industry. You're always learning. You never look at a movie the same way. Once you start producing movies, you're not looking at the movie to be entertained. You're looking at, wow, what a great shot. how did they get that angle? Wow, you know, what lighting did they use?
Or a horrible shot. They should have.
Exactly, right? And you're looking at you like, horrible acting. They should have just made it a solid
And your
film.
husband, he's going to movies with you now. He's like, wait, no, let's just watch the movie.
Yeah.
Don't pay any attention to that boom microphone hanging over there.
Right, and you know, and that's really bad, you know, being a film critic.
Right.
When I'm a filmmaker, because I'm sure people looking at my stuff and, you know, picking out all the critiquing it, picking out all the bad things as well.
But the important thing about it is that you said you're willing to learn and grow.
Oh,
and
my
so,
goodness,
you know, the best and easiest way to do that is to have people to see your productions and to be able to give you feedback on that and for you to be able to receive that.
Yeah. When I first started out, I didn't really care about the production part of it. I don't just care about the message, you know. It's like, this is important stuff. People need to hear about it. And then I started realizing, you know, well, the cinematography and all of this stuff, it needs to be on point.
Right.
And so now I'm learning all the technical part. Right. I've done a lot of my own filming. Look, under duress, not choice. I've done practically everything except editing, you know, as far as like the button part, you know, sitting down. Right. You know, when I do the editing, I'm right next to my editor, you know, and I have my script and everything, and I'm telling them how I want them to make it pretty. That's why I said making it look pretty. So, and I don't want to learn how to edit.
No, you don't? No.
I'm too creative. I'm not a real technical person. Yeah. All I really want to do is direct and produce. That's it. Right. And I've been able to do all of it except the editing part. But I just really want to hone my skill as a producer and as a director. And as much as I'm gonna miss being behind the camera, not really. You know, it's like it's time to step it up, you know, and get a full crew and things like that, which I'm doing on this film, my latest film.
Right. Well, before we go to break, I can tell you as an editor and someone who loves editing myself that when you learn the creative process of doing the technical editing side of it, it makes you look at the shots and the directing and everything in a different way. Okay. You see the end before you get there. Well,
I am going to take, because I feel like I should know every aspect of it, I am going to learn how to edit. I'm getting ready to take some classes now. Funny you should say that. Yeah. Because there are little things that I want to be able to do before I actually get in the room with the editor. Right. Because time is money. Money is time. Yes. And so I am going to learn how to edit. And who knows, I learned how to build websites. And I'm like, wow, this is great, and it's really technical. So maybe I'll feel the same way about editing film.
Yeah, you will. Okay. All right, so we're going to go to break, and for all of our students who are watching this, she knows how to do everything, and what does that make you? More marketable and more profitable. Okay? And we'll be right back after this commercial on UAPB Currents.
That's low. That's low. That's low.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. Stop the texts. Stop the wrecks. Visit us at stoptextstoprex.org.
Welcome back to UAPB Currents, and again we are joined by Mrs. Cindy Hurst, filmmaker, and we've been having such a wonderful time talking and enjoying her experience and becoming a filmmaker that we've gotten completely off subject, and we have to talk about the films and your new baby, your new creation before baseball and your tour coming up and all of that. So before we get into the tour, let's talk about before baseball.
Oh wow, that's my new baby. That is a baby that I've been pregnant with for a long time. About 3.5 years ago, my son read a book. I forgot the name of the book, but it had to do with current football players being a slave to the football industry. And he made a statement during the conversation that really struck me as remarkable. In the foreword of this book, the author said that the first African-American professional sports person made $1 million not as playing ball, but as a jockey in horse racing. And I was like, really? The first black professional athlete made money as a jockey. And I'm like, wow, that's really fascinating. Who even thinks about horse racing, let alone having the jockey make that much money?
Right.
So at that point, that little nugget stayed with me, and I said, I have to do a film about that. And it kind of stayed there. And of course, and you should know this, as a producer, you have all of these different things churning inside of you, and then you meet people who say, oh, you need to do a story about this. I had started focusing my attention on doing another story when I was in Louisiana, and I was gathering research for it, which will probably be my next baby. And then when I got married, my husband is an avid horse racing fan.
Okay.
And here in Arkansas, of course, it's a rich history of horse racing here.
Right.
So I kind of remembered the thing, and I said, I always did want to do a film about the history of African-American jockeys.
Okay.
And so I started doing research on it, and it just kind of like took off. It started gaining momentum, and I told my husband, I was like, this is the next baby. It's time for me to give birth to it. So it's going to be a fascinating piece of work.
Yeah.
I mean, the subject matter is absolutely fascinating. It's a history that a lot of people don't know about.
Right, yeah.
And when you talk about how the African American jockeys dominated, they didn't just ride, they dominated this industry. It was America's first sport. A lot of people don't recognize that. Horse racing was the American first sport ever. And that's why I named it before baseball, because all of this stuff happened long before baseball was even thought of or conceived. Right. And a lot of people think that black people integrated sports during the Jackie Robinson years, and that's a total myth. So what this film is going to do is going to shed light on horse racing in general and how it came to be. Is going to also shed light on the athletes and their stories and what they had to go through. Them being dominant, the fall, and how they left for a very long time, and their recent comeback into the industry. So exciting stuff ahead.
It does. It sounds like
and the
awesome
website,
film.
if you want to learn more, the website is beforebaseball.org.
Okay.
And you can learn a lot more about the film.
Okay. All right. And we still have, just a little bit of time left, but tell us about the Cindy Hurst screening tour and your trip that's coming up to Europe.
Yes. Finally. When I first did Natural Woman, I knew that what we were going through here in the States, I knew that it was going to eventually trickle to Europe. A really good friend of mine, her name is Ansela, and she is a loctician. She does a lot of work in France every year. She does a hair show over there called, a children's hair show called Stop the Lie, L-Y-E. And I said, wow, I can't wait to get over there. And she said, yeah, because they're going through the same thing that we're going through, the natural hair explosion. Well, I ended up getting in contact with a young lady in Amsterdam who ended up having a screening, and I did a Skype session with her. I didn't go over there, but it made front page in the newspaper, and she said, well, I'm going to have another one. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to come over there. Well, since that time, since planning the screening with her, I'm going to also be in Berlin, Germany during the same time, and hopefully in London. What my goal is to do a whole screening tour in Europe. Is kind of coming at an almost inconvenient time since I'm doing this film now. But trust me, I'll make time to get over there. So I'm really focusing a lot of my efforts on doing tours, touring Europe. But here in the States, since the inception of Natural Woman and the other films that I've done since that time, what I do is I travel to different universities primarily screen my films, and we have a panel discussion afterwards, because the information that I talk about is discussion worthy. Yeah. And so I think that the discussion is even more important than the screening of the film. Right. The screening of the film is kind of like a icebreaker. Right. For the deeper conversation.
Right. Okay. Now, I know that, again, since you are an independent filmmaker, that you, are doing this on your own, you have a lot of needs, and you also have a lot of opportunities, because as you said, there are things that you need help with. Yes. And we have lots of students.
Interns. Yes. Calling all interns.
So, let us know how people can go about getting in touch with you if they want to schedule a tour for, we need to find out how we can get a screening. I want to see the film. I want to see, a screening. I have tons of people that I know that probably are going to say, Shelly, we need her, to come and do a screening. So how can we get in contact with you? How can, what specific duties do you think that you would have that you would need internships for, so they can start getting those resumes ready now? Okay.
Well, let's go with, first of all, you can get in contact with me at my website, because there's email addresses, and I like to send people to the website so they can learn more about me. So that's cindy-hurst.com, with cindy-hurst.com.
Right there. Okay.
Yes. So you can contact me directly there, and you can also go to the info, and then you'll talk to other people. My interns. Yes. My interns.
That's your camera right there.
My interns. Whenever doing a documentary is a bit different than doing a narrative film. Right. Because with narrative, you start out with a script, and with a documentary, you make a script from the footage that you obtain. Yeah. As the crazy, insane, mad woman that I am, and very much really meticulous about my work, I make transcripts of all of the footage that I have. So every word that comes out of the subject's mouth, I write it down, and I put those things in categories. So when I'm really putting the film together, I'll be able to go to each one. So I will need interns to help me with the transcripts. Right. As I mentioned earlier, I don't do any editing. Right. Of yet. Yes. I'm going to start, but I'm always looking for editors to help put things at the beginning of my current films, making short trailers and things like that. Right. And to infuse the creativity that young people infuse in art. Yeah. And I'm always happy to work with young people, because they infuse that something that I don't have anymore. I used to have it. But they infuse something different, and I like that. I like the creativity of the youth. It's a little edgy, but within certain constraints, I really like it. Okay. So I am looking for interns to help me create creatively, to just sit back and brainstorm about, how to do some things, even with the current project that I'm working on now. Right. I'm looking for fresh ideas and for people to say, hey, maybe you should do it this way. Help me produce it. Yeah. Have your name on the credits as producer. Yeah. So, that's what I will be looking for.
Okay. All right. So you've heard what she needs and how you can help and how you can contact her. Thank you so much for coming and joining us today. And we wish you the best of luck on your tours and with all of your future films, and we will be looking for you.
Thank you.
And we know you'll hear from Mr. Spike Lee soon as well. And that's it for us here this time on UAPB Currents, and we will see you next time.